y'all, it's Angela here again at the Chicken Coop Homestead. Thank y'all for coming and visiting with me today. We're gonna do some oil. We've made tinctures before, I've strained my tinctures, and now I'm going to make some oils. It is an easy process. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. So some of the things that you're gonna need are, you're gonna need some sort of carrier oil. I've got some avocado oil here and I've got olive oil. My preference is probably olive oil, but I wanted to try avocado oil at one time, so I bought some. So I probably need, I'm just going to use that up today, or use some of it today. So a good oil, you can use grapeseed oil, all sorts of kind of oils, any kind of oil that you prefer. And then the other thing that you might need, a few drops of vitamin E into your oil as a preservative. I just got this at Walmart's, just a vitamin E oil, okay? All right, then you're going to need some sort of jar to put your herb in to pour the oil over. And so I've got a few jars here, just different, all these are just jars I saved. I've got, pasta jars, pickle jars. I've got just a regular little ball jar here. One thing I did want to mention, last night we were having pancakes for dinner, and I had a little bottle from Cracker Barrel of syrup left over. So when I looked at that little bottle, I love that bottle. That's a pretty shape. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to clean that up. That could be a good tincture bottle. It could be a good oil bottle. So I saved the bottle, took the label off, and I'm going to use that in my home apothecary. And won't that make just a cute little bottle for your herbs or your oils or your tinctures? The one thing, if you have trouble getting labels off, there's two methods that I use. One is I just kind of try to scrape it with my fingernail and see how, get as much of the label off as I can. And then the second thing I use is I have some oil, every once in a while you'll get some oil that you've had for a long time that goes rancid. I have just a little bottle of that, jar of that underneath my sink, and I use that to take my labels off with. Believe it or not, just regular vegetable oil will take most any label off. And then another thing that will take labels off is hand sanitizer. I know that's crazy, but we all have hand sanitizer around after what we've been through in the last couple of years. So if you have a trouble spot, you could also use hand sanitizer to get labels off. All right, so here are my oils, and of course you're going to need some lids. This is another thing. If my bottle doesn't have lids, or if I'm using a ball jar, I reuse my lids from canning. Not only are you going to save when you use your bottles that you've been collecting, but you're also, if you have to use your ball jars, try to reuse your lids from canning, and that way you're not spending money on your lids and wasting those good lids that are so hard to find these days. And then here are just some of my the herbs that I'm going to make an oil out of today. Another thing that you're going to use is my rice cooker. I don't have that out yet just because I don't have a lot of space for that. But your rice cooker is going to speed your process up. So I'll kind of get into that in just a little bit, but let's get started. Let me kind of clear some of this away and we'll get started. The first herb that we're going to do is Balm of Gilead. Now when you look at this herb, it's like little, let's see if I can bring it to you. It's like little, kind of like seed pods. I don't know how well that's focusing. They're tough, but they're not like rock hard. So instinctively, I feel like that I need to crush these up a little bit so that I can get the oil extracted out of them. I just feel like if I put those hard things in oil, they're just going to sit there. That's just my thought. I might not be right about that. But so I've got my mortar and pestle, and I'm going to kind of break these up if I can. Just kind of bruise them, crush them up a little. Oh yeah, it's breaking up because I can kind of smell the herb now. I wasn't smelling it before. I'm not trying to turn it into a powder. I just want to break those little pods up. show y'all a little bit. See, I didn't just make it into a powder. I just kind of broke it up and crushed up the little pods. When you're working with these herbs and you're using oil, you want to cover up the herb in a little bit extra. You want about maybe a ½ inch or an inch more than the herb, but you don't also want a lot of airspace in your jar. So try to find a jar that is a good size for whatever amount of herbs that you have. I think this will work good. So I'm just going to drop my canning funnel in there and get the rest of this. So that is really good. That's going to be a good amount. All right, so I'm going to use olive oil. Now, I know this is probably not a real great brand of olive oil, but I live in East Texas in a small town, so you kind of get what you get. So if anybody has any brand of olive oil out there that you like, shoot me a message in the comment section, because I would love a really good olive oil. So I've got this in here, but also there might be some little air bubbles. So I'm going to kind of stir this up a little bit and get any air pockets out. This is a little cake tester, nothing fancy. And I can already tell this seed pod of this Balm of Gilead, I guess it's a seed pod. I really don't know. It might be a dried flower, or it might be a dried calyx. I have no idea what it is. But it is soaking up into that. So I'm going to pour almost right up to the tip top, just to push that air out, because the air is what's going to, you know, speed up the process of your herb turning rancid. And I'm going to put a lid on here. And I'm gonna screw it on, but not real tight, because I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I'm going to label it. And I'm going to set this one aside. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put any vitamin E oil in there, so I'm going to put a few drops. I may even wait till afterwards and put the vitamin E oil in there so it doesn't have to heat up. You can do it either way. Okay, so this is Arnica. You see this in stores now. They're making a lot of salves and stuff out of it for muscle pain and things like that. So I was really excited to get this. This looks like just the little flowers. It doesn't have a bad smell. It kind of has a little bit of a musky smell, like not as bad as valerian. Nothing is as bad as valerian. This doesn't fit down in the jar very well, so I'm just going to hold it with my finger and hold the jar at the same time. And I'm going to try to pour this down in here without making a big old mess. Try. you can push the herb down. You don't want to pack it in, but you don't want it to just be a lot of airspace. That's just gonna, you know, you're gonna use a lot more oil. You're gonna use a lot bigger jar than you really need. You don't want it packed down, but you don't want it just in there with a lot of airspace in it. All right. So I've got this in here. That's going to work perfect. Arnica oil. So you see a lot of air bubbles kind of coming up inside the jar because there are air bubbles. And I will say, I'm kind of a one ingredient herbalist right now. I always feel like I can always combine things, but I can't take things apart. So if I make an oil of arnica and I want to add some other oil with it, I can take a little bit of that oil and a little bit of this oil and mix it together. But if I made it that way, I would never be able to take it apart. And then also too, just my nursing knowledge kicks in, and if you've never used an oil before, you don't know if you're allergic to it or not. If you have something mixed together, you will not be able to tell what you're allergic to because they're mixed together. So for me, I would rather have things separated. Now, a lot of people love to make all these herbal concoctions and put all sorts of things together. It's just not where I'm at right now. I may be that way later on in my herbal journey, but for me, I like to make singular oils, singular tinctures. Pretty much, okay? It's kind of like when you give a shot in nursing. You give, if you're having to give two different kind of medications, you give a shot in one arm and a shot in the other arm. And that way, if they have a reaction, you know which one they had a reaction to, okay? So that's just me. That's just kind of me as a nurse. And you can tell little by little that this is soaking up a lot of this oil. I've had to pour, well, if I wouldn't have the oil jar in front of me. So what may happen is you may fill this jar up and it may be to the tippy top, and then a little bit later you might need to come back at the end of the day and see if you need to top this off, because you don't want the herb exposed to air up here on the top. You want it to be covered in oil. That's what's going to, that's like a protective layer of the oil on top of the herb. Okay, so I think I pretty much got any kind of air bubbles out. Let me kind of, yeah, I don't think I have any, but that's kind of, it's almost like canning, you know, you gotta get those air bubbles out. And I didn't crush this because this had a lot of it was like small little particles, so that the oil will be able to get all around that. All right, so I'm going to top this off. Put the lid on here. And right arnica. Y'all, that's another little tip for your Sharpie markers. Now, eventually they'll fade, so don't just count on a Sharpie marker. After I do these, I'm going to make a little tag. But if you want to reuse this jar, but now it has arnica written on it, use your hand sanitizer. Will get that off, and you can reuse this. You can write on this lid again. So I went and got another one of these jars. When I was making my tinctures, I made a tincture of yarrow, but I also wanted to make a yarrow oil. So I don't have as much, so I wanted to get a jar that I felt would be a good size for this. Yarrow is a very old herb. could have probably even got a small. Let me see if I can find a smaller jar. That's why it's good to have all sorts of different sizes. Oh yeah, this will be perfect. See, it's a little baby food jar. Okay? All right, so this is yarrow flower, and soldiers use that. It's a very old herb that has a lot of history. It's called soldier's wort. A wart, anytime you see things like anything called wart, that's an old term for herb. Okay? Or a medicinal herb. So it has a long history of soldiers taking this herb into battle in case they were injured. It would help heal their injuries or any kind of infection that they might have. All right. And it's amazing how much this oil soaks up into the herb. The only thing what a lot of people don't like olive oil for is because it's kind of a thick oil and might leave you kind of greasy when you put it on your body and stuff. Put that lid on there. All right, and this next one is calendula flower. Lots of people use, there's lots of stuff about calendula. It's a great little herb. It's a beautiful flower too. Oh, it's gonna be so pretty. I wish I could see this. See if I can get it out with making it out a big mess. See those pretty yellow, really pretty yellow petals. Alright, so once again, I'm going to hold the funnel. And I may just try to put some in here first. Let's see. Oh, it's going to be so pretty. It's going to be really pretty oil. I love yellow. Alright, so if you can see, there's still kind of some sticking up in the funnel. I'm just going to try to push that down a little bit. Not pack it down, but just push it down into the jar. Yeah, perfect size. I can use my avocado for this. It has a really kind of a clean smell to it. I like that smell. Bags it. Yeah, just has a very clean smell. And these are the petals. You see the whole flower head in here a little bit. This is going to be awesome. A little bit more oil. My last herb is plantain. Talked about plantain before. You know, everybody says, oh, plantain is found everywhere. It's everywhere. Well, I never could figure out where it was. And so I kept seeing, you know, I just kept looking in books trying to, you know, learn what it looked like. And it looked like a big plant, kind of like a mullein. And there is that kind of plant, but in my area, the plant might just be about a little rosette of about 4 or 5 inches across. And it's a little minor little plantain. So I wasn't seeing it, but when I finally saw what the little stems look like, I was like, oh, I have that in my yard. I have that everywhere. It's just a nuisance weed. Well, I have plantain, but mine was just a little small plantain. And it may be small just because we mow, and so that the plant doesn't have time to get big and get established before we're mowing again. I don't know. That may be the issue. I don't know. All right, so this is plantain. It's going to make a very good healing salve, or oil right now, then we'll go into salves later. I might have needed a smaller jar. Let me see if I have a smaller jar. Let me go look for something. I'll be right back. All right, so I went and got, this is just a little too big, I think. I went and got a 1.5 pint jelly jar. Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah. See what this smells like. Really didn't have a smell. The avocado oil will make a better oil for, like, it's a thinner oil, so it's kind of be easier to rub in. See what this sack smells like. It smells kind of dried, leafy smelling. Yeah, it has a good smell. Not a bad smell at all. Okay, I still have air pockets. Even though I've done that, I'm seeing little air bubbles come up again. So I'm going to stir this around a little bit more. Try to get all that air. That air is your enemy when you're working with oils. It's kind of like canning. You want that air out of there. And it's amazing how you can fill this up and how much these little herbs soak in this oil already. All right. And since this is a jelly jar, I'm just going to put a used lid on here. Another lid. All right. let me kind of clear some of this away and we'll do a little bit more discussion here. All right, so I got all that cleared away, and we're going to kind of process the oil, speed this process up. There's several different ways you can do this. You can just take that jar right there, set it in a windowsill, not that the sun's just baking down into that windowsill, just on the windowsill of your kitchen, just so it gets a little sunlight. It's a warm area in your house. And set it up there, put a little tea towel over it so that it's not exposed to a lot of light, and let it sit there. Let it sit there for 4 or 6 weeks, and then strain it. And that's the way they used to do it. There wasn't any other way. You can do like you used to do sun tea. Put it outside in the heat, covered up by a good cloth towel so that it's not exposed to the sun. You're exposing it to the warmth of the sun, but not the rays of the sun. And let it heat up there all day at a slow temperature, and you can strain it then. One way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to use a rice cooker. And the reason why I chose this rice cooker, that I can set it at this warm, just this keep warm, which is perfect for processing your oils. You don't want, I think the range is, I'll look it up, but I think it's from like 95, to like 120 is what you want it. And that I have tested this the last time I made herbs, and I had a little meat thermometer down in there just to kind of keep looking at the temperature, and it was perfect. It didn't go, it was stated about like 100, I think, maybe 110 almost the whole time. So it was a perfect temperature. So if you have something that you can set at a specific temperature, that would be even better. Like if you had a roaster, that would even be better if you're trying to process a lot of herbs at the same time. So I may have to do this in batches because I don't know that all these are going to fit, but I'm going to put a little bit of water in here, and I'm going to put the herb down in here and just let this kind of process. It'll probably kind of process all day, and then tomorrow I will strain the oil. The other thing is I'm going to let these sit a little bit before I put them in here, because I want that oil to get all through that herb. There's no sense me processing this oil with this herb that hasn't penetrated the herb itself, so that it can extract all the great properties of the oil. So I'm going to let these sit out here probably the rest of a few hours or so, and see if I need to top them up with any more oil. And I probably will, because the herb is that's an indication that the herb has absorbed more oil into its leaves, its petals, all that kind of stuff. The dried material has taken on more of the oil. And then I'm going to process this for about 6 to 8 hours, and then turn it off, let it cool down, and then tomorrow you could strain it out and you will have your oil. There's machines out there now that people are using that's specific for herbs to make that. A friend of mine has it. I don't have that. I'm just kind of doing it the old-fashioned way, okay? All right, so we're going to let these sit, and when we come back to put these in here, I'll let you know. All right, so I filled my rice cooker up, and I have it on warm. I looked that up just to make sure and double check my temperatures. It gets to 150 degrees, and to make your oils, you want it to be anywhere from 110, some say 95, to 140, 150 for 4 to 6 hours. I've put just these 3 in here because these all are about the same height, and then later I will do these 2 that are a smaller height so that the water doesn't get into the jars accidentally, for any reason. So these are just going to sit here on my counter and warm for about 6 to 8 hours. Some say 4, but I prefer going a little bit longer. I'll keep an eye on the water just to make sure it stays up.
and we'll make these oils. And then we'll do this next batch just the same. I'll probably pour some water off and put those in there and do the exact same thing. So just wanted to kind of let y'all know where we were at on this part of the project. So thanks for visiting with me, and I will bring y'all back on another video to see us straining these oils and things and maybe making salves. All right, thank y'all.